It's 3 o'clock, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and just get started. There will be many people probably joining the meeting as we get into the throes of this. But this particular training refresher is going to be a little different than if you've been around for the last year, you might have attended one of our section minimum standards training sessions. At our recent meeting of the regional directors, we had decided that maybe we should hold another training or a refresher and maybe answer any of the questions that you might have about section minimum standards that we can help to demonstrate or in real time answer your questions. However, we've sent this out to 400 and so people. We expect about 150 people who have indicated they may attend. So we can't have everyone talking at the same time. So if you will use the chat to write any questions that you have, then I will get to those and then you can unmute yourself and then we can have that discussion. As you will also notice, so I'm Penny Woolery. I'm the manager of certification and membership. However, I have been heavily involved in streamlining the reporting using some technology for section minimum standards and the scorecard. And that's why you have seen my name or interacted with me in the last year or so. However, I also invited from our headquarters staff who actually oversee the actual section minimum standards and have the authority to review and accept or reject for a variety of reasons any of your information. And you've probably seen their name as well. You've interacted with Molly Burrow. Molly, maybe you could just wave. I know you're muted.
Hi.
And so Molly is our expert as far as really working in section minimum standards more than anyone at headquarters, probably other than me. So she's deep into that. And also we have Janice, who is our manager of accounting and administration. So Janice, if you want to wave hi too, they're here to answer any of your specific questions related to many of the standards. If you don't quite understand them and need a little bit more guidance. So I'm going to first of all show you how you access the app. I really don't want to get into a lot of the background of this app because I feel like that is a barrier to people being able to actually get into the nitty-gritty of section minimum standards. So I'm just going to show you how you can access it. But if you have any specific questions, please write it in the chat and then I will get to it and then we'll handle those questions as they happen. Or if you just kind of want to discuss some other things related to accessing the app, what you can do, what you can't do, what you can see, what you can't see. Really, there are just a plethora of questions that we're here to answer. We realize that many of you section leaders might have been around a while, but some of you might be brand new. So we know that there'll be a mix of questions and we just want to be respectful of your time, but also get to the really deep questions that you have related to reporting section minimum standards. So I haven't seen any, people are still joining, but I haven't seen any questions in the chat box. If you don't know where the chat box is, depending on where your navigational screen is for Zoom, mine's at the bottom of the screen. There's a black bar there and there's a little button that has the word chat, but it also has like the little word bubble. If you click on that, it will allow you to ask a question to someone specifically. But if you want everyone to see it, then just type your question and it will go to everyone. If you just want me or someone specifically to see it, then you'll need to search for their name and send that message to them specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and get started just for the sake of time and go over some of the basics. So how you access the section minimum standards recording app is you can go to our website, and we're here at web.aacei.org. And under the membership tab, if you go to sections, if you click on section minimum standards or section scorecard, it'll give you the link to actually go to find the app. So if you click this, it's going to take you to the app. For the purposes of this training, so that I don't mess anything up in the real app, I'm using what is called our dev, which is a development. It's a place for you to play around. You actually have access to this as well by clicking on this little box right here. Go to the sandbox. So, and if you are on here, if you could mute yourself just so that there's no feedback. We are, yeah.
I'm so sorry. This is Sandra, Region 1. I cannot see your screen, and in the comment section, looks like a lot of people cannot see it either. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I interrupted you. Thank you.
No. I'm so glad that you did. Thank you. I apologize for that. So let's go back. So how you access the section minimum standards is at our website, now that you can see it. And just so that you all know, this is being recorded so that those that couldn't attend actually will have access to it if they want to refresh their memory or learn a little bit more about section minimum standards. So you access the app by going to our website at web.aacei.org. If you go to membership and you go down to sections, you can select, you can select section minimum standards or the scorecard. And in this navigation is a little tricky, or the scorecard, and it will bring you here. And you simply can just scroll down and select, if you're on your cell phone, or if you're on your desktop, you can click it and it's going to take you to the minimum standards. For the purposes of this training, because I do not want to mess up the actual app, the working app, and mess up anybody's activity, we're going to use this sandbox. It's a development site for you to play around with, and you do have the ability to play around with this as well. You can go to our website on the section minimum standards or scorecard page and select this, go to the sandbox, and it will take you there. This, of course, is a view as an administrator, and that's why I'm using this for you today. So at this page, you see that you have a number of ways to enter your activity. I don't want to just read this to you because you can read it. There are 3 ways that you can enter activity into the minimum standards. So I'm going to go to the chat just to see if there are any questions related to anything specific. Okay, not seeing your screen. Okay, I don't see anything else, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to go ahead and ask those. So let's talk about how you enter the information. So I'm actually going to just type in a section's name, and we're going to start with Aurora Edmonton, only because it's at the very top of the list because it's in alphabetical order. And as you can see, it gives you information about the section, but then it lists a number of tabs here. Anything in blue is your section minimum standards. So those are the items that you have to report. They're not at your discretion. The scorecard tab, which is purple, is elective. You don't have to enter this if you don't want to. If you are not that interested, if your section's not interested in awards or being recognized for those types of things, you do not have to enter anything in that particular tab. But the blue tabs, you do. We're going to talk about them each in a second. The first tab, as you notice where you land, it's a black tab. That is your officer list. And if you land on your section and there is nothing listed here as officers, that is your first problem. That means that you don't have the ability for the rest of the tabs to actually use your name to report on behalf of your section. We often get a question about this, especially a year under our belt. If you land here and you don't see anyone here, and then you think, oh my goodness, now I can't report, and you just want to take your information and send it to me, send it to Molly, send it to Gina, or anyone at headquarters. If you do that, you still aren't going to get credit for it. So here's what you should do. Contact me, Molly, or Gina at headquarters and just say, look, I went to enter information into the app for my section, but I see that my name isn't there. We neglected to send it in time, or we just had our elections, we're a little bit behind. Because we can then go in and modify your end date. So you notice on the screen here, you have start date and end date. That end date means something, that's your term. So if it's just 1 day over, you will no longer show because you're considered inactive according to the database. So all we simply can do is go in, extend your end date, and then you will be able to see your name and you'll be able to report, because then you'll be able to find your name, which will make more sense in a minute. And that way you're going to get credit for it, because oftentimes people will just send me their whole officer list. And if I were to take that information and put it in our main database system, this is not our main database system. That's all fine and well. But if I take that information, then at the end of the year, when the accounting department is checking off all of the section minimum standards, under this third tab, election results, it's not going to show because you didn't technically report them in the app. So it needs to be in the app so that you get credit for it. So that's why when you come to this first tab, it's really important to make sure that if you don't have any officers there, don't just let it go and think you're going to send just a report and still get credit for it. It needs to be accounted for in the app for posterity. So just let us know and we'll extend your profile in the app, which is not our main database system, and you'll then be able to report for the rest of the tabs. So I see that I have a question, and thank you. Yes, that's the next one. We're going to elaborate on the government filing. That's one of the questions that I just received. So I hope that the officer tab makes sense. This is just a great way for you to see who your officers are. And these are the people that you reported on your election results of who is able to report on your behalf. You could technically have more than these 6 individuals, but these are the 6 individuals that your section determined is able to be in the app and they can report. So those 6 people are the only ones that can report in the app. And you'll see that that'll make sense. So when you report that, if that needs to change, you need to let us know, and then we'll go ahead and update the system as well. So let's move on to the next question, which is the first tab, government filings. Now, as you can see, now this is just our dev site. So please don't take this to be like, oh, Aurora Edmonton didn't do their government filings. This is old data. It's for us to play around with. So this is just to kind of give you an idea. So for government filing, you can see that there's nothing here, but if you needed to enter that information so that you get credit for it for your section, you simply select add government filings. And then you're asked a number of questions. It automatically fills out your section. And this is where that officer name, that list that I said you won't be able to report, the reporter name, it then knows who your section officers are because they're tied together. You can select who you are. In this case, just for play, I'm going to be Jeff. And then you have to answer a question. Is a government filing required in your country? So the answer is simply yes or no. I will tell you that if you were in the United States, one of the sections here, it automatically knows. It's not going to ask you that question. It automatically knows that you are required because in the United States, we know that. However, we know that in other countries, and they vary, and us at headquarters not being in those countries, we're not very familiar with it. So we're asking you, and in region 1, that would still not be United States. So we ask the question, is a government filing required in your country? You're simply going to answer yes or no. If you answer no, and I'm going to let Janice elaborate if you have any more comments. I'm just preparing you, Janice, in the event that there is more information as the question that was asked. If you answer no, then it's going to say, provide a copy of the section approved financial review. If you recall in the handbook and on our website, over here, when it talks about the government filings, it says that for non-US sections, if a government filing is not required, and remember, here we answered no, it says a financial review must be conducted and approved by the section board and filed with AACE headquarters. So in this browse button, that's what you're going to upload. If you answered yes, then it's just simply going to ask you for a copy of your government filing. And you would click browse and you would go find your file and upload it. And then you would click save and close. And then, excuse me, then here you can see that it was recorded. Now, have I answered that question? And I'm trying to see who asked it. So Sandra is indicating on here that government filing is required for Canada section. So you could ask her for the documents and you can upload it there. So is there any other elaboration that we need to, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at the name and I don't know how to pronounce it. It's OlukaYode. You would ask the question. You can unmute yourself if you need more elaboration on government filing, or was that demonstration and explanation suitable for what you needed to know? And I'm trying to find.
Hello, Penny, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, my name is Coyote, actually. So it's a OlukaYode, but you call it Coyote.
Okay.
And, yes. So the government filing, I just wanted to get a little term on what specific document do you think will require, if it's not in US, that will be considered as a government filing? That's really why I wanted elaboration.
Okay, so let me ask you, may I know what country you're in?
I'm in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, okay.
Yes.
Janice, do you want to let Coyote know what we're looking for?
So what we're looking for is basically just self-reporting on your part. If as an AACE section, as a recognized organization in your country, if you're required to file anything with the government, then you would answer yes to that question, and then you would upload whatever that filing is. In the United States, there's a filing that's required by each US section with the Internal Revenue Service. We ask for that to be uploaded for US sections because, you know, laws can vary from country to country. It's up to you to just answer that to the best of your knowledge. And then provide whatever filing it is that you have sent in to your government, or confirmation that you've received from them, whatever's required on your part for that.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think she has answered the question. Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Certainly.
Does anyone else have any other questions related to government filing? Because I really want to take this opportunity. I think our last training we went through, we didn't give anyone the opportunity to ask questions. We just basically taught and gave demonstration. And now is the time, you know, with 1 year under our belt, well, nearly 2 now, to really answer any of your questions before we move along. Let me look. It says, hi, Penny, if there is no government filing required, is there a specific template on the approved financial review expected? That's a really good question. Janice, do you have any type of template? Is there something specifically that you're looking for that could give them guidance?
Yeah, there isn't a specific template. The document that you would send in would basically be a summary of the year of financial activity. So it would be, something like a basic summary of perhaps the money in and then the money out for the year with an ending balance. We try not to be too prescriptive with this because, of course, every section is going to be a little bit different, and even just the financial standards for each country is going to be slightly different. But we're just looking for a reasonable summary of the financial activities that most likely is going to be something that's presented by your treasurer to your board, that they will review for just reasonableness of what has been spent and what has been received, and just basically reviewing the financial activities of the section. So anything that you send to us is reviewed, and we reach out just as we do for any other submission in the app. If we have any questions, we will reach out to the submitter and ask those, and correspond directly with whoever submitted the document. So it will be, if it isn't automatically approved, we will reach out and let you know if we have any questions.
Nina, does that answer your question? I don't hear
Yes,
any.
thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, I don't see any questions, any more questions related to government filing. That doesn't mean you can't ask those questions if you think about them down the road. But let's go to the next tab, which is election results. This is probably the only minimum standard that the accounting department doesn't necessarily deal with. They deal with it because they have to check it off to make sure that you've met the standards. But that's my department. So Gina is someone that you probably are very much familiar with. This is where you're actually going to report your new officers. Every year you're supposed to have an election. Now, I do understand that many of you have elections that have 2-year terms, and that's fine for your section. But when it comes to section minimum standards, you have to report it every year. So it's something that the board had adopted in 2016. So you still have to report it every year. And that is probably one of the biggest issues with sections not reporting their election results or their officer list, because they're going on a 2-year period. They already had their elections 2 years ago, and they're like, well, nothing's changed. But in order for you to get credit for it, you still have to provide us your roster. And we have given you, on our website, we have given you a link here under the section officers and directors. It says that you have to submit them no later than December 31st of each year. So there again, you have to give us the information, even if your people are on a 2-year term period. There is a required template just so that we know that we're getting all the information that we need right off the bat, and there's no back and forth. And you can click here to get it, and it will automatically download. If you noticed on the left-hand bottom side of my corner, that downloaded. And you can simply use that form right here. We understand that you might have other people that are allowed to report in the app. We simply are saying the 2 most important for us is the president and the treasurer. So we would like to have that information. I also want to point out this column B, that's the AACE ID. Don't get hung up on that. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm still trying to get the IDs, and so I couldn't submit it yet. We can look that up. If you just tell us who they are, their name, give us their email if you know that, and let us know their term dates. Remember, even if you put 2 years, we're only going to put you down for 1 year in the app, because it has to be reported every year in order for you to get credit for it. And then you need to let us know, and it's simply a yes or no. Are they eligible to submit activity in the app? That helps us to separate people that you might have as an officer, but they're not reporting in the app. Sometimes that has to do with like maybe your meetings people, or someone who's just kind of coordinating. If you have food being served at your meetings or finding a venue, they don't necessarily have to report in the app. Sometimes it's more of the other officers like president, secretary, treasurer, things like that. So you want to use this template. So you're going to select add election results, and the same thing happens as we did for government. This really is as easy as we could make it to be. You don't have very many fields other than the banking. You don't have a whole lot of fields that you have to fill out. A lot of them are even filled out for you. So we already know that we're on Aurora. You look for your name. We're going to be Jeff again. And then you're going to go browse and find that template that you just had. So, and I don't know what we're going to have here. I think we're going to have this in the download. Here it is. So I'm just going to say that was my folder, as you can see it there, save and close. And then look what happens. It actually then saves it for you. If you go to election results, it's there. I want to stop for one moment and point out, you've been seeing these things that we've entered, the government filing and the election results, that have turned this pale red color. That is just a visual that we added earlier this year to show you that it's still in a state that it has not been accepted. I want to show you, I'm going to flip over to this other standard here, and I'm going to find, oh goodness gracious, now I need to find a section. I'm going to show you the difference between, and I know that I was looking at this earlier today. I want to look at one of these. When it's finally been accepted from headquarters, it turns green. So as you can see over here at the end, it says section that standard was met. So Molly, who I talked about earlier, who gets all of your notifications and she reviews all of your documentation, she makes sure that it falls within those parameters. And once she accepts that it is actually been submitted and she reviewed it and it was acceptable, once she accepts that, then that changes to green. And you know visually, so if we were back here, you know that Molly hasn't reviewed it yet, or she might have rejected it. And Molly, you can explain, when you reject something, you usually reach out to the people and explain to them why. Isn't that correct?
I do. I reach out to the email address of the person that did the submission and tell them, you know, I see that you've done this submission. This was the documentation. These are the reasons that I'm having issues. And then give them a suggestion of what they can send. If it's a documentation that was maybe a duplicate of something else, or maybe there was no documentation at all, you know, to remind them to please go in and edit the submission and download the documentation.
Thank you, Molly. So as you can tell, we added that earlier this year based on feedback from the first year of using the app, so that you can easily see, if I was Aurora Edmonton right now, I could see that I submitted this, but it has not been met yet. So I can't really say that I've done that. And the same would go for the election results. As you can see here, it's not met. So as soon as it's an automation, as soon as Molly accepts it in real time, that turns green and you know that you've met that standard. It's as easy as that. Once we get that information for this particular tab, Gina actually gets this and she makes all of the changes in the main database, and then we upload all of this information to QuickBase so that your officer tab is always updated with the most current information. Do we have any questions? I don't see any questions. You guys are really good on this. I don't see any other questions for election results or government filing. So let's move to bank account. I will say that bank account probably is the standard that asks for the most information. All the others are maybe 3 or 4 fields that you need to fill out, but you do need to provide some documentation. So for banking accounts, you are going to select add bank account. And here again, this stuff is all the same where you pick, you know, the name for the reporter. You're going to notice this area here. I'm going to highlight it because all of this information starts to populate based on landing on this add a bank account. If you select this box, you are saying that we, meaning on behalf of my section, are not able to maintain a bank account in the section's name. Here again, as we talked about in government filing, there are certain countries that prohibit sections to have a bank account in the section's name. So in those cases, so we'll deal with that right off the bat. If you select this button, then you have a comments box. Notice all those other things go away. You just need to explain so that we have record of it is to, who, we know who you are, but that you're not able to do that, but that you have other information. And Janice or Molly, is there anything specific that you would like to see in the comment box if this does pertain to their sections?
Nothing specific in that box. In a situation where a section is unable to maintain an account in their own name, we do have an alternative procedure where an expense report can be submitted with detailed receipts. And we take that conversation outside of the app. We take that offline and deal directly with whoever will be submitting the expense report. So that's going to be a more direct one-on-one communication with the section officer. So just, if you want to include, generally what's prohibiting that is that legal, a legal reason that the account cannot be maintained in the section's name. You can put that in there. And then once the section has achieved compliance, then we will take that conversation offline.
Okay, perfect. I do have a question that popped up, Janice. It says, if our bank account has not changed, is there any way to copy last year's data?
You should still go ahead and update your submission because if you've had even a change in account signatory, that should be updated. Each compliance year, you should have new updated submissions, even if it's the same, the account information is the same, you'll still want to submit for the current year compliance.
Okay. So let's take this off and we're going to see now. I really don't want to, well, I might as well. So if we're going to put name of the banking institution, you just enter the name of the banking institution. You enter if it's a checking or savings, you're going to enter your numbers here. I'm doing this all fictitious just so that we can get through it. The same thing with the account beneficiary name, whatever that name is, and then who are your signatures. So I'm going to put Janice and Molly on this particular fictitious entry. And then a copy of the canceled check if applicable. That's not, and I think there are different rules, and I think it's listed in the handbook. You can tell I don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis. I'm not exactly sure what that was for, but I do know that the copy of the bank statement is preferable here as well. Janice, is there any reason why someone would do a canceled check?
Some accounts now don't have actual paper checks. We do go through a vetting process. We do have to make sure that the account is in the section name. And we do need to obtain proper ACH routing for our US sections. All of those payments are ACH payments. So sometimes the ACH routing number will be different than the paper deposit routing number. So again, some of that information, like once you've uploaded your documents, all of that will be vetted and reviewed by HQ staff, and then we will get back to you if there is an issue or concern or missing information. But the basic documentation, if you have a canceled check, that is ideal. That contains everything that we need. Yeah. Bank statement, it has some of it. Bank statement's not going to have a routing number, but we'll we will work with you on that once we get your submission.
Perfect. I see another chat. Let's see. What if the section plans to have 0 expenses and 0 earnings and does not plan to have a bank account at all? That question's for you, Janice. You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the question in the chat. Can you, it might have
yeah,
just gone
it's a-
to you?
Yeah, I think, yes, it says to me, direct message, sorry.
Okay, that's
What
okay.
if the section plans to have 0 expenses and 0 earnings and does not plan to have a bank account at all?
For the government filing
This is for banking.
for banking.
Yeah, it says, what if the
Okay.
section plans to have 0 expenses and 0 earnings? And they don't plan to have a bank account at all. And from what I've heard you say, Janice, because of the reconciliation at the end of the year and the section funding going to the section, there would need to be a way to send that money to them. So there would be a quote unquote earnings, correct?
Correct. So in the case of a international section, a non-US section, we can work with you to utilize an expense report method where the section funding will go directly to an individual, but it has to be a full reimbursement. There's a completely separate method that we use for that. It gets very detailed with multiple approvals and things like that. So in that case, you would mark that you're not maintaining a bank account in the section's name.
And that would be
then
up here.
And right, correct.
Okay. So I hope that answers the question. If that pertains to you, you're not planning on having a bank account at all, you would select we are not able to maintain a bank account. And that's when Janice had already said that will prompt them to take that offline with you and have that conversation outside of the app. Okay. Then you have down here at the bottom the additional details needed for non-US. So if you do have a bank account, because we know that some countries, you don't have to be in the United States to be able to have a bank account. Some of them do allow it. You'll need to provide us the account address. I'm just going to put some fictitious stuff here and the country, and we'll just, I don't know, I'll just pick something. And then you want to enter the account number and SWIFT code or the account number and IBAN. There is a little help button here, and it says complete if applicable to your country. It says the same thing here. Janice or Molly, can you guys give any indication to which applies to which country?
You would just get that information directly from your bank. They'll provide it to you. Most of the time, it's even accessible. You know, if you have an online access, there will be a drop down where you can get that information. IBAN numbers don't apply to certain countries. Some they do, some they don't. Either way, you can get that directly from your bank.
From their bank. Okay,
Yep.
so you've heard that there first. If you don't know, just contact your bank and they should let you know if it's got a SWIFT code or the IBAN code. So in a perfect world, this would be filled out completely correct. And then we would click save and close. And there you have it. It's going to show up here. Now, remember, if you try to go back in here and edit this or look at it, it's not going to give you any information. Now it is here, like this information up here, but the banking information, because we know for security reasons that once you enter that information, the only time that you see it is when you're entering it from the section leader standpoint. Once you submit it, headquarters gets a copy of it and they can see exactly what you've sent, and then you get a copy of it in your email. But since this is something that people can scroll through and look at, all of the different officers, different people, we do not display it once you've submitted it, so that it's not out there for anyone to kind of get information. that would not be a smart thing to do. So it will give you that message here. If you need further assistance for what you submitted, you can contact Molly or Janice, and they will get that information to you. They're the only ones that see that information. So that does keep it secure. So that's kind of how you handle that. I see another question popping up. Okay, so that was just a gotta go message. So, okay, so we only have 3 more to go. And as you can see, this is still that light red. So it's waiting for Molly to look at. So now let's go to technical meetings. Now here, there were some old information that was entered in here, as you can see, and they've turned green. So that must mean that they reported 2 technical meetings and that Molly accepted those. So we know that for technical meetings, you have to have 3. So at this juncture, you could come here and say, okay, I've entered 2 meetings, I've met 2, I need 1 more. And you would click add technical meetings. And here again, you only have a few things that you need to provide to prove that you've had this meeting. You need to put the date of the meeting. So we'll pretend that today is one of those meetings. And then we're just going to talk about SMS. And then let's say that you've had 15 people. If the documentation would be anything, your email that you sent out to your section officers that gave an announcement of the meeting, you could use that. If it was an email, if you do Zoom, you could actually print your Zoom invitation that gives all of the details about the meeting, and you could upload that here so that you could have, I'm actually just going to use our old template just for the sake of time. If you have any comments that you need to make, that's not necessary, but we always leave room for you to maybe explain something if it's not self-explanatory. You click save and close. And then now when you go to technical meetings, you're going to see those 2 that were already there and approved, and you've got 1 that's waiting for Molly to review and accept. If you get that notification, as you can see here, because it's not one and done like these where it just says standard is met, for technical meetings and communications, the color coding helps a lot, but it's also keeping track of it for you down here. If you see where my little mouse is moving around, only 2 have been met so far. So once the 3rd is accepted, then it will say 3, and you know that you've met that standard and that you're okay. I do want to also bring out that technical meetings, and we'll get into it a little bit more in detail when it comes to the scorecard, since that's been changed a little bit. But all of your meetings, even those that you want to get credit for the scorecard beyond 3, everything that you do for meetings is entered here. Another thing that happens when Molly's reviewing is once she's accepted something, she clicks a button and that will be transferred over to the scorecard. And let me show you what happens when that happens. As you can see here, transferred from SMS entry and transferred from SMS entry, that is equal to these 2 here, because she already accepted those. And when she did, it automatically transferred them over to the scorecard that you're getting your points for. That way, last year we heard you loud and clear that it was very confusing to just put the 2 or the 3 over here and then the rest over in the scorecard. This way we eliminated that confusion. Enter all of your meetings under technical meetings, and Molly will, if it meets the criteria, it's got to be within that date range. You can't just put a meeting in there for 2020 and expect to get credit for it for this year. That will be rejected. But those technical meetings will get credit in the scorecard if you enter them there. And let's see, I got a chat. Do we enter other meetings such as skills and knowledge training sessions here? Well, yes and no. It really just depends on your meeting. And hopefully when we get to the scorecard, I'll answer this a little bit more in detail. So I want to say yes, because if it's just a regular meeting, say for instance, you're having a section planning meeting. If it's just your officers, your executive officers meeting to talk about the technical program for the next year or for the next 6 months, or however it is that your section does that, you can count that here. If it is something that is related to like an event or a conference, then you probably don't want to put it here. You probably want to put it in the scorecard. Number one, it's a bigger event. They're not equal. And you get more points for a conference and event. So I hope that makes sense. And maybe when we get to the scorecard, it might make a little bit more sense. But I want to say you can err on the part of entering in those meetings here in this tab under technical meetings. And I think we might be moving that tab to just be meetings. We're sure yet, just to maybe alleviate some more confusion. But you want to enter those things in here in this technical meetings. And when Molly reviews it, she will mark it and it will automatically go to the scorecard. But there is a big distinction between just, and I don't want to say just to diminish it, but we see events and conferences to be something of a bigger magnitude than it is for a meeting for your section. So you have to kind of weigh that. Really, it's at your discretion of how you want to count that. So I hope that answers your question. But if I haven't, you can maybe have some follow-up questions in the chat and I'll get to that. So let's move on to communications. Communications, just like technical meetings, you have to have 3 in order to meet the standard. And it's going to demonstrate the same way as here with that count of the 1, 2, and 3. So we can see there's nothing entered here. So let's add communication. Here again, most of these standards are only asking for very minimal information. So you want to enter the date and you're just going to enter the date and what was the topic or the purpose. So maybe you were going to talk about COVID, aftermath, something like that. How did you communicate it? Was it an AAC community post? Was it in your newsletter? Was it through some type of other website or social media post? So you select that. And as you can see, you can add a new choice. And I've seen some really good choices added here because it wasn't this populated before. But we would like for you to try and find something that closely relates it because we don't want that list to get too large. But if it's not here, go ahead and add a new choice. And that way you'll get credit for it. And then, of course, you want to provide your documentation to prove that you've done it. I'm just using my sample and comment only if you feel you need to elaborate that isn't self-explanatory in your documentation. And here again, you've got your documentation, your communication that's here that hasn't been reviewed yet. So there's a 0. So under communications, as it stood right today, you have not met the standard because there's a 0 here. Notice the difference here. And that's as easy as it is for communications. Your bylaws. Now, this one we get a lot of questions for, and I know it is a little confusing. So let's go ahead and select Add Bylaws. So we're going to select our reporter, and you're going to answer this question. Are your bylaws current? If they are, then you don't have to answer anything else. Everything else goes away. We just want to know, is it updated? If you say no, and I notice that this is here, so I'll need to fix that. Then you need to answer, is an amendment required for your bylaws if they're not current? So you need to answer yes or no. And have you submitted the changes? And that's to let us know. So this way we know that you are looking at them, but we know where you stand in this. And if we need to have follow-up, which is probably going to be from the board of directors, because anything related to your bylaws is a governance related issue, not to be confused with the government filing standard. So we can report this to say that this particular section, their bylaws aren't current, but they haven't submitted them yet. And then we can follow up with that. So it really just depends on what your answers are if they're not current. If they're current, then you are okay. You're fine. We have most of them that have been reported, we have them on file. So that's all you need to do for this. So for this purpose, we're just going to say yes. And as you can see, it's listed here and it's still that light red because Molly hasn't reviewed it yet to accept it to show that that standard has been met. So, and I don't see any questions related to that yet. Let's talk about the scorecard. So as you can see, there are already some things that have been related to the scorecard. So just briefly, I want to go back to our website and I want to go down to the page for the scorecard, because as you all were notified, those of you that have been section officers for a while, those of you that are new, you may not know this, but this is the place where you can find this information on our website under membership, section, and section scorecard. This is the category and point value. In April of 2021, when the membership board was still in existence, they're now called the Membership Advisory Committee. We revamped this whole entire process to make things more streamlined so that you don't have to worry about all of the different little activities. You really only need to focus on 5 categories that are being reported by you as the section officer. They are: category 1 is outreach, certification training, charitable community contributions, section scholarships, or conference and event. Remember, we just talked about this under the meeting tab. This is where it defines the difference between an actual meeting and a conference and event and the point value related to that. Those 5 categories are the only categories that you're going to see when you go to enter your scorecard. Let me demonstrate. If I click add scorecard and I find my name, the only categories that show for you is, well, actually on this one, I'm sorry, for demonstration purposes, I turned that off. So let me go over here and just show you what we are looking at here. So if I go to the scorecard for Aurora, Edmonton, I want to show you what that looks like when you add a scorecard. You want to find your name, and then you only have 5 categories. So you're going to select one of those. You might be wondering, well, what about some of the other things? Well, let's look at that. These items right here that are under this gray area on our website, those are the things that you're going to be putting in the section minimum standards tab for meetings and communications. So previously on the scorecard, you were able to count all of these variety of meetings that you were having. It's one of the things that I alluded to earlier with one of the questions. You used to be able to count, section planning and, all of the different things that you were doing throughout the year of getting your calendar together. Same thing with communication. Well, we're not prohibiting you from doing that. You can still do that. Where you're going to do that though is, let's go back to here, is you want to go to the tab of meetings and communications to put those in there. So if you're having a section planning meeting with your section officers, you simply can just add that meeting and put the date that you had it, and you can put section planning. And if there were only 5 officers or 2 officers, and then you'll add your information because it's still going to support what you were doing, and you're going to click save and close. So the value of that meeting when it's transferred over, after Molly reviews that, you're going to get, you used to get 75 points for that, I believe, but it's going to come over here. And as you can see right here, now this was a conference and event, but you're going to get that 75 points from there. So you're going to get the credit for that. It's the same thing with communication. If you are communicating to your maintaining a website, that's communication. So you used to have to put all of those things for every little thing that you did in the scorecard. And this way you're keeping them nice and tidy in these tabs, and you're automatically getting credit for it. So it keeps you focused on the things that you need to report. Then you still get credit for things that headquarters is actually doing for you. So that is new certified members. As you can see here, this right here was automatically entered for them every month. When I look at all of the newly certified people, I give every section credit automatically for the number of people that have been certified in their sections. So that organically happens to you. You never have to report it. It's reported on your behalf. The same is true for membership renewal. If you recall, if you've been around a while, you used to have to put in all of these numbers and the app would figure out the ratio or the percentage, and then you would get so many points for this many percentage. It was very convoluted. This way, we are saying you're going to get renewal points, 100 for 70% renewal rate, 200 points for 80% renewal rate, and 300 points for 90% plus renewal rate. So you're automatically going to get that at the end of the year, whenever we see how many people renewed for your section. The same is true for membership growth. We don't do it every month because we know that when people join, by default, they're in community. They're not in a section. We give them time to get acclimated to AACE and to find their section. And then they can log in, update their profile and say, I don't want to be in community. I want to be in Houston, or I want to be in UAE. And they select it. So at the end of the year, we take all of that information that has given our members time to settle into a section, and we give you credit for that automatically. So that is why you only have to focus on, sorry, I clicked on that, these 5 categories. What do those categories mean? Well, there is a handbook that you can download. It's right here. I actually have it pulled up, which will explain all of this information to you. But let's look at those really quick. Outreach is conducting outreaches to universities, corporations to attract new members. If your section has a team of people that are talking to all the companies in your area to talk to them about corporate membership, or public membership, or universities to talk about student membership, whatever that is, if you're doing that activity by adding that into your scorecard, you get 35 points for every outreach event that you're participating in. Certification training. We know that there are so many sections that are doing this, that they're really investing in their members, and whether it's through the seminar in a box or some other means. Some people are very creative in the way that they're doing that for the section. When you conduct those trainings, above and beyond the people who are being certified that you get credit for, you get 100 points for each program that you conduct through your section. Any of your charitable community contributions, you get 75 points for those activities. Some sections still do scholarships. So you get 100 points for every student that you are giving a scholarship to. And conference or event. This one probably needs a little bit more explanation, because some people are having a hard time differentiating between what a meeting and a conference and event, and what does collaboration mean. So an individual section can completely put on their own conference, and a conference usually is something a lot bigger than a section meeting, which is a technical meeting. It might have a panel, it might be over several days, it's for many, many hours. Or let's just put it this way, it definitely is more than 1 hour. So you can do an event or a conference on your own as an individual section, but notice the word or a collaboration of sections. So you can have 2 sections that are collaborating to put on an event or a conference. Here's what the real criteria is. It has to be 4 hours or more. So a technical meeting that is 2 hours is still a technical meeting. It's just a meeting. A meeting for 3 hours is still a meeting. That's where you're going to count it under the tab for meetings. If your section is doing something for more than 4 hours or collaborating with another section for 4 hours or more, you can count that as a conference or event. You'll need to demonstrate that and prove that it is that, but both sections get credit for it. So if Australia and UAE are collaborating on an event, a conference for 10, 20 hours, then they both get to claim both of that, and you get 200 points for each conference or event. So that's how you're going to enter the information for the scorecard. that you only have to, everything else is entered on your behalf or automatically transferred from the technical meetings. So I hope that makes sense. If anyone has questions about the scorecard, please let us know. And let's see, we're right at the hour. I'm willing to answer any more questions if you have. I'm sure that Molly or Janice are as well. So I'll give you just a minute or so to get any of those questions to us. Otherwise, we hope that this has been very insightful for you and that you understand how to report, how simple it can be if you do them as they happen and not have to do them all at the same time at the end of the year, what the real meaning is for why you have to file a government filing or a bank account, and what the distinctions of those mean, and how to focus your scorecard for your section so that you can qualify for section awards at the end of the year. You can always email any of us if you have any questions. You don't have to wait for another training session or a refresher. We do plan to have these again. We plan to have them at different times to accommodate those that are in different time zones. But we thank you for your attention and for always being really easy to work with. And we will look forward to the next time. And we hope that you have a better experience in reporting in the app. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.